Hi, and welcome to this overview of the Pentagon. While it's really hard to categorize this instrument, I guess the best way to describe it is two synthesizers in one with some of the most creative modulation and morph capabilities I've ever seen. Now there's a lot to cover in this synth, so I'll try to make it as short as possible, and at the end I'll play you some of the sounds so you can get an idea of how amazing this thing is. So right at the top we have our two sound sources for each of the synth engines, and we can choose between the 19 available waves or sounds, and they are really nice. They have a very vintage yet modern tone to them. And right next to that we have our volume and pan control. So going down to the main section, this is where we control the EQ, filter, lo-fi, mod, envelope, and sends. In order to edit each section, we click on the larger button next to the parameters we wish to edit. And to activate, we use the smaller button right next to it. So the EQ is pretty straightforward. We have 3 bands, each with its own frequency and gain control. In the filter and lo-fi section, we can choose the filter type and control the cutoff and resonance, while these two dials control the lo-fi parameters of this section. Now we can turn the filter on or off using this button, while turning the lo-fi feature using this button. The mod section is divided to 4 parameters: filter, tuning, volume, and pan. You can choose any one of the 43 LFO shapes for each parameters while changing the amount, frequency, fade-in time, and pulse width when available for each parameter. And just as a quick reminder that you can set completely different parameters for each of the synth sections while playing them simultaneously. However, if you wish to sync the parameter changes, you can use the sync button to choose the sync mode. Side sync syncs all the parameters on the side you're editing, so all amounts, all frequency, etc. Cross sync syncs sections between sides, so any changes I make to the filter amount will reflect on the other side. And full sync changes the parameters for all sections on both sides. ADSR has 4 envelopes for filter, tune, volume, and pan. Select each envelope using the arrow next to the parameter, or choose Sync to set the same envelope to all 4 parameters. You can set the envelope amount to each parameter using these sliders. By default, volume is all the way up. So this is quite a powerful synth engine, and you can imagine the possibilities already, but we hardly scratched the surface of this synth. In the middle of the main section we have 4 faders that morphs the sound. This gives you an interesting transition between the two synth engines. So we can morph the EQ, lo-fi and cutoff, and modulation. The EQ is morphing between a predetermined low and high tone balance, while the filter has 5 predetermined morphing shapes which you can select right here at the bottom, and these have different movement to each of them. The mod morphing fader mixes between all amounts from 0 to 100 and vice versa. The width fader operates in a unique way, where when I set it to one side, the selected side is spread to stereo, while the other side is summed to mono, and the other way around when I push it to the other side. Now you can always lock the parameters for each side if you wish to morph just one of the engines. Finally, we have send effects. Here you'll find send controls for chorus, phaser, flanger, delay, and reverb. These will work as send effects and will add on top of the dry sound. Now in order to edit effects, we use this lower section. Choose the parameters you wish to edit and tweak the parameters. At the bottom left corner of each effect, we have a return dial, which basically lets you set the volume for each effect. You can always monitor the effects without the dry signal using this button. Going over to the master section, we have Portamento, Chord, and key effects. Highlight the section to turn it on or off, and use Edit to tweak its parameters. Portamento sets the synth to mono, and you can edit the glide speed using this dial. Chord lets you play a full chord or intervals on each individual key. You can set the chord or interval type using this dial, and choose the scale and key using these dials. Finally, key effects creates key switches for the lo-fi and filters section. You can see that when I play each key, it triggers a momentary morph to the parameters until I release the key. These will control the cutoff, drift, and crunch, and then the same on the second synth engine. You can set the speed of the morph and dials amount when pressed and released using these parameters. Finally, we have an arpeggiator with 64-step sequencer where you can set the arpeggiator mode, number of steps, number of repetitions per step. You can set the rate, swing, and also change the step length, and you can do that per step. So, a very powerful arpeggiator. Furthermore, we have 10 independent sequencers that can modulate a wide variety of parameters. So, the sonic possibilities of this synth are astounding, and you can achieve so many different sounds with this instrument. Now, if all of this sounds cumbersome or overwhelming, just hit the randomize button and go crazy. There are no wrong answers. You can also select which section to randomize, while L and R refers to left and right synth engines, and X is both, just in case you don't want to go too crazy. So this kind of covers most things you need to know about this feature-packed synth. Now let's hear some demos, and I will see you guys later.